Now you brought up EHD. And what is that?
EHD, hemorrhagic disease is a virus that affects whitetail deer.
It's the same as blue tongue, right?
And hemorrhagic disease is caused by two different viruses, the Epizootic hemorrhagic disease virus, EHD virus, or the blue tongue virus. They're very similar viruses, so they're kind of just under that hemorrhagic disease umbrella. It's been known about since I know back in the 60s, state agencies started funding what became known as the Southeastern Cooperative Wildlife Disease Study over at the University of Georgia Vet School, trying to figure out what was going on with this. Something's going on with deer in the summers in these states, and so it was kind of that was kind of all found. The SCWIDUS, as that unit's called, was all founded on what eventually became hemorrhagic disease. But what it is a virus that's transmitted by little biting flies during the summer months. Typically, it'll start being active in July, and it'll go typically until first frost, whenever the insects are killed back. It's pretty much all over the whitetails range in the southeast. It's found everywhere, but it affects deer differently according to where you're at. While CWD is 100% fatal, if a deer gets it, they're eventually going to die from it if nothing else kills it. Hemorrhagic disease is not that way. In most of Alabama, it appears that most deer just will get sick from it, and then they get over it. And then the good thing about it is, as with most viruses, once a deer is exposed to it this year, they develop antibodies to it. So if they're exposed to that same strain of virus the next year, they're not even going to get sick. It's like chicken pox in humans. Once you get it, you develop antibodies to it, and you're not exposed to it. So that's a good thing. But as you move north in the whitetails range, they can be the mortality events are a lot more significant. It's rare, based on what I've saw over my time with the state. It's rare that there would be an instance where there would be 10% of the local isolated population die from hemorrhagic disease in a year. Most of them just don't. If there's 10% of the deer population die in August, September, October, people's going to find dead bodies in Alabama, even though it's hot, because they're out there, they're scouting or they're getting ready for hunting season. They're going to find them. As you move north, even just like into Tennessee, they can have mortality events where there's 30+% of the deer die in a single season, and those are really significant die-offs, but they bounce right back from it because of the ones that don't die, they have the antibodies, and so it's like probably about a 5-year cycle where it's real active for this year. Then it's not as active because there's a big percentage of the population have those antibodies, but as you get more years where they haven't had significant outbreaks, there's less and less deer with antibodies, and so you're setting up for another event where there's more deer dying. But in Alabama and other various deep southern states, the significant die-offs are minimal, if any. Over my time, probably the only areas where it appeared to be some pretty good die-offs where it might have been 10% would be like in Jackson County, Limestone County, Lauderdale County, those very northern tier of counties. You get down in the southern half of the state, it's rare to get any reports of dead deer. And the state, all agencies all across the country have do an annual hemorrhagic disease survey. And so what they're doing is they'll report to that group at the University of Georgia SCWIDUS. They'll report how many deer, or if they had mortality events that were confirmed either by necropsies where the staff examined the deer and confirmed that it was likely hemorrhagic disease, or they drew blood and had it tested for the antibodies, or they were able to isolate the virus, or more commonly, if they examined hunter harvested deer in hunting season, and they noticed that the deer had their what's called sloughing hooves. And many of your hunters may have seen this before. Deer that are exposed to hemorrhagic disease, they get the virus, and it's a very short-lived virus. It only affects them for just a few days, and then they get over it, and they have varying degrees of issues. Sometimes there's nothing, but sometimes for a lot of them, the virus affects soft tissues of the body, so they'll get ulcers in their mouth or on their tongue, and it also will interrupt the growth of their hooves. And so
I heard and kind of noticed as the EHD affects more mature bucks for some reason. And can you kind of explain that? Or
well, I think probably what happens with that is, as I mentioned about how there will be an outbreak, and the deer that don't die from it will have antibodies, and so you'll go several years without a lot of activity, so you get more and more deer in the population without antibodies, and then you'll have one of those perfect storm years where it's I know in some of the some states they've been able to show a pretty clear connection between really wet weather like in June, early July, followed by dry spells, really dry, because that creates all these standing water, and then they dry up, and so you've got a lot of muddy areas around sites, and so you have a more significant year that year, a lot more insects of those insects. And so if it's been 4 or 5 years since they were a significant event, then you've got potentially a lot of 3, 4, 5-year-old deer that don't have the antibodies. And so on a really bad year in a population that hasn't been exposed to it for several years, you're likely to see some of those better bucks die, those older bucks. And those are the ones that's going to get reported, and there's going to be some 4 or 5-year-old does out there that are dead too, but may not get reported as often as a buck with a big set of antlers. They get a lot more. You don't see a lot of big does on the front of a hunting magazine, so you don't get a lot of people reporting a dead doe as opposed to a big buck if they find it. So
right. Well,
I think that's probably more about it, but it's probably just the timeline on when there was a real active hemorrhagic disease year, followed by several years of not having activity, and then you get a bad year, and there's more deer that are susceptible to it in the population.
Right. So generally in Alabama, or maybe in most of the South, we don't really have to worry about that affecting, like in Montana or somewhere. Yeah. I remember in Montana a few years ago, several years back, they had like wiped the herd out.
It would be like 40-50%, and again, that's in local populations. It's not like across the entire state, but if you hunt or own land in those isolated populations that are impacted by a significant outbreak, then it's a big concern. But that's like I said, that's basically when you just move just north of here, like starting in Tennessee and moving north, you see those kind of events. So
wow. All right. Hey everybody, thank y'all for watching the videos. Well, again, we appreciate y'all's support. If you haven't liked, please like and subscribe. And you don't care if you haven't got one of our books, check out Amazon and get a book. Also, we got a link on there where you can, on our YouTube channel, where you can go on. We got a little store set up, like if you're interested in any kind of merchandise, shirts and stuff, you can check that out. And we really appreciate anything like that. So, again, we appreciate y'all's support. Keep watching. We're going to keep trying to share the outdoors and how we do some things, and try to help everybody that we can enjoy the outdoors. And, we do this for just basically because of the environment and the community that's involved and built around hunting. So again, we appreciate y'all. Like, share, and we'll see y'all again.